We're going to give you the best upper body exercises for athletes, and we're going to start right now. Okay, so right off the bat, let's go through this. We're going to start off, and we're going to do rankings of a chest row / seal row, farmer's walks, handstand, push-ups, bench press, incline bench, pull-ups, rope climb, push press, shrugs, and preacher curl. That's the ranking. Now, we're going to do this on an S tier. So when I like to rank these for athletes, right, I'm looking at it, and I'm going, okay, S tier, I'm looking at what sports or how many sports does this movement transfer over to. Okay, so if it transfers to a lot of sports, it's going to be S tier, meaning if you get really good at this lift, you can get really good at a large pool of sports, right? So if I can, let's say theoretically, using an example of like a back squat, if my back squat goes up, and my vertical goes up, and my back squat goes up, and my broad jump goes up, and I see that those are metrics that then lead to good success in, throwing or in football or whatever the sport might be. That would be an example of a good transfer of an exercise, and thus possibly an S tier ranking. A would be, it just transfers really, really well, but not to absolutely every single sport. B would be, it's a good exercise, but maybe it's a select movement. C would be, yes, it's still a good exercise, but this is just going to be more relegated to maybe some hypertrophy work, maybe one or two different specific sports. And then D would be like, yeah, this is a great exercise for the off season, still something that we could use. But when we're really, really looking at developing athletes, as far as this movement pattern is concerned, it's not going to be like the pivotal exercise that develops a whole bunch of different athletes. And so that's the one thing I want to do is clarify. We're going through again, pull-ups, handstand push-ups, farmer's walks, dumbbell chest row / seal row, push press, rope climb, shrugs, curls. Now I'm sure people already are commenting, farmer's carry as an upper body lift, I can't believe that. One thing we have to think about, okay, and I know Charles Poliquin used to talk about farmer's lifts or farmer's carries. He thought were like a quad trap exercise, trap still upper body. I'm looking at farmer's carries as grip trap work. Okay, I'm looking at seal row as lats, grip work, bicep work. I'm looking at bench press as pecs, triceps, shoulders. I'm looking at incline as shoulders, shoulders and pecs. Pull-ups, we're looking at lats, biceps. Push press, we're looking at a full body lift, but a lot of speed on the triceps on that extension, and there's a little hidden factor from push presses. Rope climb, we're looking at a full, really high speed, and when we say high speed, when you're doing a rope climb, you're accelerating through that full range of motion. You accelerate almost as though you would have accommodating resistance. Shrugs for the traps, and then curls for you can fill in the blank. Now, when we're looking at this, I'm going to start off right away. Let's start off with pull-ups. I'm looking at doing pull-ups, and I'm thinking through athletes that might be in sport depth 1, and if you don't understand the sport depth concept, I'll pitch it to you really quickly. It's our system of training that we look at athletes. We compartmentalize them into 5 different types of sports. Okay, so the sport depth 1 would be, let's say, shot putters, power lifters, Olympic weightlifters, discus throwers. So super power-based athletes, not a lot of endurance is needed. So if we're looking at something like a pull-up, we typically reflect pull-ups on sport depth 3, sport depth 4. So sport depth 3 would be the combat-based athletes. That's where we're going to see you need max strength, you need to be explosive, and you need really good endurance. So like wrestling, BJJ, something like that. Sport depth 4 would be like field hockey, lacrosse, soccer, basketball. Those athletes still need to be able to do pull-ups, but they also need to be having a good engine. And then we would see sport depth 5, that's going to be like distance runners, triathletes, ultra marathoners. So I'm looking at pull-ups. And when we're talking about developing athletes from like 5th, 6th, 7th grade, pull-ups are absolutely freaking phenomenal. Like arguably, I love them. Like every single workout that I'm giving someone, 97% of the time, I've got pull-ups in it. But I'm putting pull-ups as an A tier. And the reason being is because, one, they are hard to do in the beginning. Younger kids struggle with them in the early onset. But two, they do. I think there's one exercise that might be better for that the compartment the compartment that I put pull-ups in. So A tier, everybody should be doing pull-ups. Even the big huskies that we have with our shot putters, they will be doing pull-ups, but they do still complain about them quite a bit. So pull-ups, I believe, are like absolutely upper echelon. A tier, still freaking phenomenal. Now, next exercise. Let's go with the handstand push-ups here that we're going to pull, because this is something that if you're in the weightlifting realm, you might see athletes doing handstand push-ups. I've been in the back where I've seen Maddie Rogers warming up, doing handstand push-ups for like sets of 5 just to warm up her shoulders before snatching and before hitting jerks. I think, for me personally as a wrestler, when I was growing up, we would have to do 50 handstand push-ups, 50 pull-ups 3 days a week, and we'd have to do 100 push-ups. Okay, so this was like our coach would say 3 days a week after practice, 50 handstands, 50 pull-ups, 100 push-ups. Okay, that was like our ultimate calisthenic workout, 3 days a week. And that was from, literally middle school all the way up to high school till we graduated. So I've always had this special place for handstand push-ups. As a bigger dude, I was still always able to execute them. Now, with that being said, they can be a little bit dangerous. I've had Sam Mattis. Sam Mattis is a 2-time Olympian. We tried handstand push-ups once, and he fell on his head. So when we're looking at the barrier of entry, it's a little high. And when we're looking at the absolute necessity to have them, it's arguable that there's a lot of sports you don't need to have these in. Now, if I'm looking at combat sports like Sport Depth 3, if I'm looking at Sport Depth 4, I think they should be able to do handstand push-ups. Not all of them are capable, but I think you could make that argument. I'm going to put handstand push-ups as a B tier. B tier. Now, the big thing here is that if you get really good at handstand push-ups, your bench goes up, your incline bench, your dumbbell bench, all of these things improve. Okay, so it's a freaking awesome lift. If you're heavier, it's a lot harder. You can just do a handstand hold. I still think too that as we age, I think this is another exercise I'm going to try to work on myself as I'm getting older, because it is such a freaking phenomenal movement. Okay. Next exercise I want to get into, and this is going to be the image that we have on the screen here, is going to be a dumbbell chest row. And I'm going to pair dumbbell chest rows with seal rows. And the reason being is like these are movements that you can sort of replace if you're doing pull-ups. You can sort of use a seal row or a chest row. Essentially a dumbbell chest row is a seal row just with dumbbells. So dumbbell seal row, chest row, whatever, barbell row. These are exercises that, I grew up doing a lot of bent over rows. As I got older, I like to replace the bent over row with the actual chest row or with the seal row, because I had the chest supported. It would dial in my lats and erectors a little bit more with less hamstring engagement, less lower back engagement. And that's the one benefit between the seal row and the chest row in general, is that you're not actually using a bent over row that's going to have some swing. It's going to have some lower back. It's going to have some hamstring work. And if we want to go really, really heavy, I would argue it's more of a leg lift than it is an upper body lift. But when we're looking at the seal row, that isolation is really, really good. I also like the fact that if you're using an elevated bench, you have a target that you're trying to work towards. So you're actually trying to hit the target with the bench, which forces you to almost think about bending the bar around the bench. That's what we were fortunate enough here. We got a Craigslist special like 15 years ago that we can elevate and you can actually hit the bench with the barbell. Now with the dumbbells, you can go even deeper with your range of motion because you can get past the bench. Okay, so it's a really, really good movement. I also like to do it because you can do crazy drop sets on it with minimal amounts of flailing. When you're doing a bent over row, you'll see kids start to flail, they'll round their back, they'll put themselves in bad position. So when you're looking at the seal row, the chest row, it's a freaking really powerful lift, but that doesn't mean much. It's still a C tier lift because it doesn't really push the needle in the realm of athletics. It's a phenomenal hypertrophy exercise. It's a phenomenal upper back exercise, but it doesn't move the needle as far as athleticism is concerned. So that's something that we're going to bring up here is like the high level, a pull-up I think can improve athleticism, especially if you get really good at neutral grip pull-ups, you get good at side-to-side pull-ups, you get good at high ring pull-ups, you get good at all these other things. That's where we really start to see the needles start to change. Now the next movement, let's get to a press. Okay, we're going to get into, we'll do 2 presses in a row. Let's go into behind the neck push press. Now, we've got a couple variations that we use at Garage Strength. We use an exercise known as the Pennsylvania press. We use an exercise known as a dumbbell Pennsylvania press. We do a front, a behind the neck jerk, all these things. But we're going to focus on the behind the neck press, push press. Okay, so what this does is we're training a counter movement into a long drive. So you can get a quick counter movement into a drive. We've had athletes like Sam Mattis push press over 200 kilos, okay? And what we use the push press for oftentimes is if I see someone who struggles with their lockout on the bench, typically we'll do more push presses. If I see someone who tends to dip forward, they lose a drive, or they need some type of neural drive, I like to use push presses because it really makes them a little bit twitchier and they learn how to apply force from the ground. They get the ground reaction and then they put it into the hands and they've got to really work long and they can dial in their technique. It's also a great movement when we're looking at weightlifting. So if I'm looking at increasing coordination, increasing neural drive, that then in turn, if we have somebody hit a really big push press, typically they're going to end up benching a lot more. And that's why behind the neck push press is S tier. Literally, if you get really freaking good at push presses, it transfers so well to other sports, to other exercises. You get good at a push press, you're going to get good at a bench. You get good at a push press, you're going to get good at jerks. You get good at a push press, you're going to get good at a vertical jump. It's crazy. And yes, there is some leg drive in it, but the big factor is finishing that high speed movement. And I like to focus on even the slow, controlled eccentric on the way down back to your back, because that also trains the eccentric movement with the shoulders, with the triceps as well. So next exercise, let's go into the bench press. Now we can lump this into bench. We can lump this into dumbbell bench. This is going to be another movement that a lot of people will say this argument. And this is just still crazy to me. Is that you might even be thinking this right now. When in sports are you laying on your back, putting out force? I remember people saying this to me when I was in high school, and my strength coach in high school saying, well, that doesn't really matter. Like, that's not how it works. Like, just because you're laying on your back doesn't mean an exercise is bad. Like our wrestling coach would say bench presses were bad because he didn't want you to lay on the back and count the lights like you would if you were getting decked in a wrestling match. But in reality, if you're strong and you're doing push presses and you're doing your leg work and you're getting better at pummeling here, okay, if my pecs are strong and my shoulders are strong and my triceps are strong, guess what? I'm going to be able to put force into somebody and throw a nasty stiff arm just like Derrick Henry. Maybe not as powerful as him, but it's going to be pretty freaking effective. So the argument that lying on your back doesn't make you athletic or anything like this is absolutely insane. Now, when we're looking at a bench press, we can do a lot of various stuff that, what we'll do is we'll go up heavy doubles. And then we might say, okay, let's take a percentage of your max. So let's put a pad and let's time, 330 pounds for a set of 5, and let's time the speed of that, because the rapid eccentric can lead to greater neural activation because there's a rapid stretch on the muscle. And then in turn, you're going to recruit more high threshold motor units, which will help you lock out faster. So there's a lot of different things that we can do with a bench press. Does this mean that it's S tier? We'll see. The other thing I like about it is that it's one of those movements that can help keep kids in the gym. International Bench Day is Monday. Here at Garage Strength, typically we start our week on a Sunday. We do Sunday leg day. We do Monday upper body day. Kids stay more committed to development if they build their bench press. Okay, that's why we put together our training progress calculator. We have kids that can go into the training progress calculator. You can use it for free. It's the first link in the description. Below that is our strength training app, Peak Strength. But the first one is the training progress calculator. That's free. You can go put in your 5 rep max right now for bench press and say, I can bench 205 for 5. That's probably going to put me at around a 240 bench press. Well, if I can bench 240 right now, how long will it take me to bench press 300 pounds? And now you can get a true expectation that is realistic based off of all the information, all the data that we have here on site here at Garage Strength, that will tell you it's probably going to take 6 to 12 months, depending on how many times a week you're training, to achieve that 300-pound bench press. Again, click that down below in the description, and you can use that for free today. Now, bench press, let's get back to it. I'm going to put it B tier, and a lot of people are going to think I'm insane, including myself. Mainly because we bench so much. There's a running joke in the gym that when you come into Garage Strength and you do an upper body workout, you're going to do a push press or a behind the neck jerk, one of those two lifts. And then you're going to go incline bench, dumbbell flat bench, decline bench, and that's going to be your workout. So there's a running joke that all we do is bench press. But with that being said, there's a couple arguments I like to make here. Younger kids, I actually think we should be pushing their incline bench more, because the transfer from the incline bench is really good to the flat bench, and the flat bench to the incline is not as good. That's why the incline bench is A tier. A tier. When we get kids to bench on the incline really heavy, okay, let's say 300 pounds for reps. We had a high school kid that went to Villanova to play football, J.R. Strauss. Okay, JR hit 315 for a set of 5 on incline bench, and then went down to the flat bench and could hit 330 for close to 10 reps as a high schooler, because his incline was so freaking strong. And the big carryover is then your shoulders are stronger. Okay, you're more stable in a lockout overhead. Okay, you're more able, and your pecs, if I remember correctly, your pecs actually get greater activation from an incline bench. Okay, so we get a lot of crazy development. Then if I look at an incline bench and I'm doing a close grip incline bench, I grew up doing close grip incline benches on a 60-degree incline. We call it the jailhouse incline. To this day, I believe I have large triceps because of that close grip incline on the 60-degree jailhouse. So when we're looking at the press, the bench, the incline, bench is B tier, incline's A tier. Both of them are phenomenal. Pay attention to which one maybe causes a little bit more fatigue. Pay attention to which one transfers really well to the sport. Pay attention, and I would recommend this too, is that if you're going to do an incline bench, don't do a push press before it. If you're going to do a flat bench, do a push press before it. That's sort of how we think through this. Okay, and that's based off of nearly 20 years of training athletes, actually 20 years of training athletes, is that now you can start to see the relationship between these different exercises. That's how we built Peak Strength. Peak Strength is our strength training app developed specifically for athletes based off of the past 2 decades of training that I've put into developing world-class athletes from the age of 10, 11 years old all the way up till making the Olympics, going to the NFL, becoming the best in the world. That's what we do inside of Peak Strength. If you're an athlete watching this and you play a sport, your sport is very likely inside of Peak Strength. I've laid out that training as effectively as possible. So click that second link in the description, head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store or the Apple iOS Store, and start training today to become a champion. Now, the next exercise, let's get into farmer's carries, because this is a big one, especially for the wrestlers. We train a lot of wrestlers here. We've had a 2-time world bronze medalist, Nick Gwiazdowski. We've had a lot of NCAA All-Americans. I want to say we're up to like 9 or 10 NCAA All-Americans, D1, and then another 3 or 4 D2. And we're going to look at, a lot of people love farmer's carries because of the grip work, because of the even cardio, ab work to a point, trap work. Now, I think there's better exercises for grip. I think there's better isolation exercises for grip. I think there's better high speed exercises for grip. I think there's better exercises for traps. I think there's better exercises for the core. Does that mean farmer's walks are bad? No. And I'm going to get a lot of hate for this. C tier for the farmer's carries, because I think that there's a lot of stuff that we can do that might be a little bit better. Do I think it's a bad movement? No, it's still C tier. It's absolutely phenomenal as far as an exercise is concerned, but it's not the absolute best tier. It's not S tier. It's not A tier. It's not even B tier. It's a good finisher out of season. Now, let's get into 2 exercises here. Okay, we got pictures of drag curls and shrugs. And these are 2 different forms of shrugs. And I would almost pair this with like a farmer's carry. If you have somebody who does have weak traps, you can almost hammer their traps with a drag curl or with a shrug, like just a standard dumbbell shrug. And then you can have them do a farmer's carry, and they're going to have a sore yoke for the next 4 days. Okay. Now, if they have really weak traps, I'd tell you to just do snatch high pulls. I'd tell you to do rhythm pulls. I'd tell you to do sets of 10 snatch high pulls and tell me which one you feel your traps more on the next day. And then you're going to make this argument because you're a research-backed guy, and you're going to say, well, soreness doesn't mean that you're actually getting stronger, Dane. And then I'm going to tell you, okay, we'll just keep doing that, and then we can talk about it. Now, when we're looking at shrugs and trap bar shrugs, trap raises, good exercises, they're okay. Trap raises are better than shrugs. Where would I put them on the tier list? D tier. We're putting them at D tier. And the reason why I'm putting them at D tier is because they're just too non-fundamental. They're just super hypertrophic. They're easy to execute. There's something that we can do with super high reps. They're not that challenging of a movement pattern. That's why I'm putting in preacher curls. Should I go C or D? C or D? As a D tier. Now, I'm putting preacher curls as a D. I'm putting shrugs as a D. Preacher curls, I think, are still underrated. I think a lot of people will say, why are we benching? Why are we doing preacher curls? The thing I like that I think is underrated about the preacher curl is that if you're looking at a kid that's learning how to do chin-ups, pull-ups, neutral grip pull-ups, things like that, rows, if they get better at preacher curls, guess what they get better at? They get better at pull-ups. Now, so we use it on the front end to get the kid bought in, and we will use preacher curls a lot. And I like to use preacher curls. I like to use drag curls. I like to use bench presses as exercises, as pull-throughs. There's a period in a kid's career from month 0 to month 24 where we literally have to play the mental game. We've got to just get them from month to month to month. That's what makes long-term commitment. Then once they get to that 24-month period, then they're like, oh man, I can get really freaking strong. I could achieve some really cool stuff. I can do what that Olympian's doing over near me. So the preacher curl and the trap bar shrugs, they have their place. They play a big role, especially on the front end of someone's career. But as far as coordination is concerned, they aren't that challenging, and they don't lead to that much athletic development. They don't transfer to a lot of different sports. If we go back to that sport depth discussion, you could look at shrugs and preacher curls, and you could make the argument that sport depth 1, sport depth 2, sport depth 3, they could benefit from these exercises, but they're not going to be like a mainstay. You go back to those sport depth discussion though, handstand push-ups, bench press, incline bench pull-ups, behind the neck presses, that's transferring over at least 4 different sport depths. And I would even argue that someone like a distance runner has benefit from doing pull-ups, from doing push presses even. Now, this last exercise that we're going to get into, this is rope climb. When I was talking about the farmer's carries for grip strength, I mentioned high speed, and it's not a high speed thing. If we're looking at rope climb, traditionally rope climb, you have to grab rapidly. Okay, you have to grab, squeeze, grab, squeeze, grab, squeeze. And on top of that, you have to accelerate through the full pattern. You also have to control in a hollow position with your trunk, with your abs. You also likely will be doing an eccentric on the way down. That's also very challenging. Okay, there's crazy grip strength. And if we look at our best wrestlers, the wrestlers that can do rope climb on a 2-inch rope very effectively, very repetitively. Same thing for our swimmers. Right now we have a swimmer, Owen Eisenhofer, is one of the best swimmers in the United States right now. He's going to be a senior in high school. You can look him up. He's an absolutely phenomenal swimmer. Unbelievable times. This dude can do 5 or 6 rope climbs at a time because that's what's going to help him with his stroke output, and his lat strength can then transfer into the pool, just like a wrestler who's doing a rope climb can transfer to being heavy on someone's head. Just like a running back like Nick Singleton, who's done a lot of rope climbs, can help carry the ball a little bit tighter. Just like a field hockey player or a lacrosse player will benefit from rope climbs because that lat strength and that core stability transfers to their strike with a hockey stick or with a lacrosse stick. So the transferability of the rope climb is absolutely phenomenal, which is why rope climbs are S tier. Please comment down below with which exercise you disagree with me the most. Which exercise shouldn't be S tier or A tier or B tier or C tier or D tier? Comment down below and say, Dane, you're a clown. These exercises, this one specifically should be here or this one should be here. I want to know, where did I go wrong? Who did I offend? Please comment down below with which exercise you think I messed up. Comment down below if there's other movements that we missed to put into this S tier listing that you think we should have touched on as far as upper body training is concerned. Head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store or the Apple iOS Store. Download Peak Strength. If you like content like this, click on this card right here, because remember, freaks, if you want to become a champion, you've always got to cultivate your power. Peace.